Hello, everybody. I'm Mike Mumford. Want to thank the Office of Research Integrity for supporting this research. Want to note the contributions of some of the grad students that have been involved here, particularly Logan Steele, Logan Watts, Kelsey Medeiros, Tyler Mulholland, and Tristan McIntyre. What I'm going to be talking about today is a meta-analysis, and I want to give you guys a preamble before I go to the meta-analysis. There's a tendency in the world to believe you need to do one meta-analysis in a field, just one, and that's the absolute utter finding. That's actually highly questionable. Maybe it would work in physics. It certainly doesn't work in biology. Social science, which is what we're doing, is a very different issue. We act to change our world. And the actions we take to change our world changes the basic pattern of the findings we get. What that means is meta-analyses have to be replicated. This study is a replication of a meta-analytic study we did earlier. Now, the change here in a significant way is the government. The government has been mandating, sort of, or encouraging strongly ethics education programs at universities. As a result, every university, they being universities, has come up with very different teaching models, very different approaches. There's a wide variety of models out there, and ultimately the intent of this grant was to find out what was working and what was not working in the various instructional models. We had three questions for this study. How effective is RCR education currently? Okay, first question. Second question, is RCR education improving? Remember, I said earlier, this is a meta-analysis, but we're rechecking another meta-analysis 10 years later, and we want to know how much improvement we've seen, or alternatively, how much loss we've seen. Finally, we want to know what is effective instructional content and what is effective instructional delivery methods. This was a very, very difficult study to conduct, okay? It took us 9 months to get the various articles that had been published in RCR Education. You guys publish everywhere. We checked the major databases, psych abstracts, educational abstracts, etc. We checked all the key journals. We identified the authors on those manuscripts. We also checked dissertation abstracts. We checked conference presentations, such as conference presentations here. We contacted all of those authors and asked them, can we have your data, part one? If it's not published or there's additional data, could you please send it to us? This was an extensive search. Now, I'm going to go back to that really late in the lecture because of a particular problem with meta-analyses. But generally speaking, with one exception, everyone sent us data. Everyone sent us data they had not published. The inclusion criteria we used in the study, we couldn't use every study we got. It had to be an explicit investigation into RCR effectiveness. So talking about attitudes or values as they framed the research enterprise, we would not consider that study because it's not explicitly a training study. There had to be a clear description of the course content, and there had to be a clear description of the evaluation methods. Not all articles actually describe what they did in training. They're sometimes very fuzzy about what they did with evaluation. They had to give us the statistics we needed to calculate effect sizes. Many articles give you F ratios. You can use an F ratio to get to an effect size estimate. Other articles don't give you that. Ultimately, our final sample was 106 ethics education courses, 150 unique effect sizes. Remember, you might be looking at different outcomes or different criteria in a given study. What we then did is we did a full-scale, unabridged content analysis. We initially developed a set of content variables, a set of delivery methods. We developed them based on the training and education literatures. We then sent that list of variables to 6 leading experts in the ethics education field. They reviewed and annotated our list. Everybody agreed on the list of variables we were content coding. We then had 3 judges trained to apply those rating scales. The training was quite extensive. It really ran about 2 days, 2 full days, so 16 hours. We assessed 100+ instructional characteristics. The inter-rater agreement following training was 86% agreement. That translates to an inter-rater agreement coefficient of about 0.78. We split our courses to address our first issue. We looked at courses that had been done before 2007, which was our first meta-analysis. We looked at courses that had been done since 2007 for our second meta-analysis. The findings up here are very, very important. This is the first finding I want you to attend to. In the courses that have the evaluation studies conducted since 2007, the average Cohen's D is 0.56. That is an adequate effect size to say ethics education is working. Second point, the earlier studies, the ones done before 2007, produced a Cohen's D of 0.36. That's a little lower than we reported in the first study. That's because we found some additional studies along the way which did not work out so well. But the biggie here is ethics education globally is working. I want to talk now about highly effective instructional content. Personal integrity refers to procedures for working through ethical problems. Do you recognize the ethical problem? Do you realize and try to control the biases you might have in approaching that problem? Do you forecast the implications of your actions? That's our big effect. But it's not the only effect. We need to talk about data integrity and data transparency. That induces sizable effects. We need to talk not just about field norms, but differences in field norms. Talking about the common rule helps. Discussing contemporary ethical issues, not just archival ethical issues, is of value. Talking about whistleblowing, however painful it is for the students, is beneficial. Authorship and publication practice is somewhat obvious. There's a typo there. That should be institutional compliance policies. How do you submit your IRB forms? That helps. Now note, this is very concrete instructional content with a heavy analysis of ethical issues and solving ethical problems. Less effective instructional content. Talking about community issues doesn't help you. Talking about personal values doesn't help you. Talking about civil maturity does not help you. Talking about diversity does not help you. Talking about organizational values does not help you. Talking about lab safety does not help you. Talking about power differentials does not help you. Highly effective delivery methods. Note-taking debate in the instruction, analysis of current events, reviews, use of worksheets in the instructional class, and case-based instruction. What those findings mean is active cognitive work with real-world problems and solving real-world ethical problems is the effective method for delivery. Less effective methods. Don't just give them a book to read. That's not good. Don't talk about different moral methods. Ontological and deontological reasoning don't help anyone. Service learning is useless, pretty much. And talking about their relationships with their mentors when the mentor has control of the situation is not helpful. A lot of ambiguities here in a certain level. The criteria here I've talked about, these are across multiple criteria. The good news is these findings converged across major types of criteria. So we have the DIT being used in some studies. We have ethical problem-solving measures being used in other studies. We have knowledge measures being used in other studies. Second issue is the file drawer problem. Okay, 49 out of the 150 studies we looked at had not been published. You guys really came through with the data we needed to do this, and we thank you for that. But we do not seem to have a strong file drawer problem here. Final thing, most of these studies are biomedical, engineering, and social sciences, okay? Believe it or not, there are ethical issues in the humanities. Believe it or not, there are ethical issues in the arts. The arts have a lot of ethics problems, by the way. The limitations bear in mind, but the file drawer problem's really not there. The big conclusions here, there are two things I want you guys to take from this talk. They're both really important. We now, 7 years later, after sustained government and institutional investment, are now seeing training programs that produce adequate effect sizes to justify ongoing ethics education. That's the first thing. The other thing, though, I want to remind you of, okay, is that some of these programs, I'm talking about overall means here. What's the overall average? Our very best programs don't give Cohen's D's of 0.56. They give Cohen's D's of 0.8 to 1.2, okay? That's the other implication. If we start thinking about best practices in ethics education, these numbers can get better than they are. And we need to start thinking about best practices in how we conduct ethics education because it's clearly working. With that, I'm done.
Thank you, Michael. We have time for one or two questions. Okay, please line up. Okay. Okay, go to the mic, please.
Thank you for your interesting speech. My name is Henriette Bout. I work for the Nijrode Business University here in the Netherlands. And I was wondering, what's your idea of effectiveness?
My personal idea?
Well, or the measurements you made on effect.
All right, I'm back. Let me answer that in two ways, okay? In a meta-analysis, you have to live with the criteria being applied in that study. And in some cases, the criteria here are not that great, right? I don't trust the DIT personally, although it's frequently used. I'd rather see a ethical problem-solving measure used. I'd rather see an ethical sensitivity measure used. These findings cut across all of those criteria. If it was my personal choice as to what criteria to use in evaluating ethics education programs, I would prefer to see a mental model assessment used based in the logic that we actually want to change people's frameworks for understanding ethical problems. There are 2 studies that have done that, so did that answer the question now?
A bit, because I think that the purpose of ethics education is that people use it in their acting, in their moral behavior. And I would consider that a part of the effect, the success of an ethics educational program.
Yes, but you have to get the behavioral measures.
Yeah.
And that's very hard for trainers to do in a live environment.
Yeah.
And we maybe had 5 studies that looked at behavior. I think 3 of those were thrown out because the behavioral measure wasn't clearly enough defined.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, next question, please.
Yeah. Oops, sorry. Thanks very much. That was a great talk, really interesting. Ginny Barber, I'm from Cope, but I'm also at Queensland University of Technology in Brisbane. So my question was, did you look at how much the kind of interventions kind of cost, both in time and in effort? Because I completely, your conclusions, resonate with our experience, but I just wondered if they had an estimate of that.
No.
Okay.
What my best take is, and it's a significant problem, and Mike Kaufman's sitting back there, so Mike can answer this better than me. We are grossly underinvesting in ethics education. Realistically, at a real university, you're talking about 600 doctoral students a year. That, to me, just on an FTE basis, is 2 to 3 full-time faculty positions. Most universities are doing, if they're doing it with faculty, they're doing it with 1 half-time faculty. So we're grossly underinvesting, but we did not look at it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, last question, please.
And on that same point, Liz Heitman from University of Texas Southwestern in Dallas, did anybody actually measure in the studies you were looking at what it cost to run the programs that they were doing?
No.
Has anyone looked at that?
No.
Because that needs to be next.
Yes. Do you want to say anything, Mike? No, this is just
No,
a
we
quick...
don't. We know it's very, very little. Most places are $0. It's volunteer labor. That's how it's done. I've surveyed some institutions, and it's 0.03% of an institution's research budget. It's practically nothing.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks again, Michael, for this interesting presentation.